Before you continue your day, there is something you were quietly led to receive, even if you did not fully understand it yet. Something in you already knew you needed this moment. Not because of coincidence, not because of habit, but because your inner world has been speaking more loudly than your outer life has been able to explain. Right now, there is no demand placed on you. No expectation to fix anything, solve anything, or carry anything further. Just this moment, as it is. It feels like life has been moving too fast, while something inside you has been moving much slower, trying to catch up with what you feel, but rarely have space to process. And maybe that is why you are here now. Not to escape your life, but to finally step back into it with peace instead of pressure. Let this be the moment where the noise begins to lose its grip, not because the world becomes silent, but because something deeper within you starts to shift. And if you are willing, allow this to be more than just words. Allow it to become a place where your mind softens, where your breathing slows, and where your heart no longer feels like it has to hold everything at once. There is no need to rush through this. Nothing important is waiting outside of this moment that cannot wait a little longer. Now gently bring your attention inward. This is where the real work begins, not by doing more, but by becoming still enough to notice what has already been asking for your attention. You are not here by accident. You are here at a point where your inner world is ready to be heard, not judged, not fixed, but understood. Now we move into the first step of this journey together. The call you feel inside did not start today. It started long before you clicked play. It began in the quiet spaces of your thoughts, in the moments you tried to ignore what your heart was carrying, and in the times you told yourself you would deal with it later. But later has brought you here. And here is where everything begins to slow down just enough for you to finally notice what has been waiting for your attention. Topic 1. The silent calling that came before the click. There was something already moving toward you before you made any conscious decision to be here. A quiet inner pull that did not use words, but awareness. It is the kind of calling that does not force itself. It simply waits until you are ready to notice it. It often arrives in the form of restlessness you cannot explain, or a subtle feeling that something within you is asking for more than distraction, more than routine, more than simply getting through the day. This calling is not pressure, it is recognition. A part of you that remembers peace even when your current state has forgotten it. And in this moment, that silent pull is still here, not demanding anything from you, only inviting you back to yourself. You are not trying to become something new. You are remembering something you have been carrying all along, quietly, patiently, beneath everything else. And now that you can feel it, even slightly, we continue deeper into this experience. There are moments when life does not ask permission to slow down. It simply creates a break in the rhythm you are following. A sudden interruption in the usual pace of thoughts, responsibilities, and expectations. And in that interruption, something subtle becomes available to you. It is not always comfortable at first. The mind is used to movement, to noise, to constant direction. So when stillness appears even briefly, it can feel unfamiliar, almost like losing your balance before realizing you are actually being steadied. This pause is not emptiness, it is space. And in this space, you are no longer only reacting to life. You are beginning to observe it from within. What once felt automatic now becomes visible. The rush of thoughts, the weight of obligations, the quiet tension you carry without noticing, all of it begins to surface just enough for awareness to touch it. And something important happens here. You stop being fully inside the current of everything, and for a moment you stand beside it. This is where reflection begins. Not forced, not intellectual, but natural. As if your inner world finally has room to breathe without being interrupted by urgency. And in this pause, there is a subtle invitation forming, not to escape your life, but to return to it with a different presence, one that is no longer fully consumed by speed. Because what follows this pause will determine how deeply you are willing to go into stillness, and how open you are to release what has been silently weighing you down. We continue gently into what you have been carrying without even realizing it. There is a kind of heaviness that does not announce itself clearly. It does not always show through tears or visible exhaustion. Instead, It settles quietly in the background of your thoughts, shaping the way you move through each day without you fully noticing. You keep going, you keep responding, you keep fulfilling what is expected, but something within you has been carrying more than words can describe. And because it has become familiar, it often goes unnamed. This is the weight of things left unspoken, unresolved feelings, delayed rest, and emotions you learn to push aside in order to continue functioning. Over time, they do not disappear. They accumulate in silence, and the mind adapts. It learns how to normalize what is actually too much. It tells you that this is just how life feels now, that everyone is like this, that you simply need to adjust. But beneath that adaptation, there is still a part of you that knows the difference between living and enduring. In this moment, that part begins to surface gently, not to overwhelm you, but to be acknowledged, because what is finally seen begins to lose its silent control over you. You may notice it now as a subtle tension, a tiredness that rest alone does not fully explain, or a sense of being emotionally stretched in directions you cannot quite define. And instead of resisting it, you are invited to simply recognize it, not to fix it, not to analyze it, but to allow it to exist in awareness without judgment. Because recognition is the first form of release. What is no longer hidden begins to loosen its grip. And as you begin to see what has been carried quietly within you, something deeper starts to prepare itself for relief. We now move into the part where your inner world begins to slow down in a more intentional way, creating space for something different to enter. The mind has its own rhythm, and when it is left without guidance, it often turns inward on itself. Thoughts begin to overlap, repeat, and expand beyond their purpose. What starts as a simple concern can slowly grow into a continuous loop that feels impossible to silence. You may notice that even when everything around you is still, something inside remains active, planning, remembering, anticipating, revisiting. The mind keeps moving as if stopping would mean losing control. But rest is not something the mind naturally knows how to create by itself. It has learned activity, not stillness. It has learned response, not release. So when silence is offered, it can initially feel unfamiliar, almost uncomfortable. And yet beneath that constant movement, there is a deeper layer of awareness that does not rush, does not repeat, and does not fragment itself into worry. It simply observes. That deeper part of you is not the noise. It is what notices the noise. In this moment, you are not asked to force your thoughts to stop. That effort only creates more tension. Instead, you are gently invited to stop feeding them with urgency, because not every thought requires continuation. Not every mental voice deserves equal weight. Some thoughts only exist because they have not yet been met with stillness. And as you begin to see this more clearly, something subtle shifts. The mind does not become empty, but it becomes less dominant, less convincing, less absolute. There is a quiet space forming between you and your thoughts, and in that space you begin to remember that you are not inside every thought you think. You are the awareness that exists before them and beyond them. There is a way of living where the day is not truly lived, it is simply endured. You wake up, you respond, you react, you fulfill what must be done, and somewhere along the way, you stop noticing how much of you is being spent just to keep going. Survival mode does not always feel dramatic. Sometimes it feels normal. It feels like responsibility, like discipline, like this is just how life is right now. But beneath that pattern, there is often a quieter truth, a part of you that has been operating without enough space to simply be. And now something different is being gently offered to you. Not a demand to change everything, not a pressure to escape your life, but an invitation to step out of constant urgency. For a moment, you are allowed to exist without solving anything, without preparing for what comes next, without mentally carrying the entire weight of the day in advance. This is unfamiliar for many people, because urgency often becomes a default state. The mind learns to believe that stillness is unsafe, that slowing down means falling behind. But that is not truth, it is conditioning. And in this moment, that conditioning begins to loosen slightly. You are not asked to abandon your responsibilities. You are simply being shown that you do not have to live inside them every second of your awareness. There is a difference between doing what must be done and being consumed by the feeling that everything must be handled right now. And as you begin to recognize that difference, something inside you starts to soften. Not collapse, not disappear, but soften. Because underneath survival mode, there is another way of being that is not driven by pressure, but by presence. And we are now moving toward the first real experience of that presence, where you begin to notice yourself again, beyond the pace of everything else. Digite 1 para escrever o próximo tópico, ou digite as alterações que deseja. Topic 6. The first second of conscious presence. There is a very subtle moment that often goes unnoticed, not because it is rare, but because it is so simple. It is the instant where you stop being fully absorbed by everything around you and suddenly become aware that you are here. Not thinking about here, not analyzing here, just being here. It can last only a second at first, a brief interruption in the usual flow of mental activity. But within that second, something significant happens. You are no longer entirely inside your thoughts, your worries, or your expectations. You are slightly outside of them, observing from a quieter place. This is the beginning of presence. Not a state you force, but a recognition that arrives when attention shifts from doing to noticing. And in that noticing, you may feel something unfamiliar, a softness in the mind, a small opening in the chest, a slight easing of internal pressure. Nothing dramatic, but deeply real. For so long, attention has been scattered outward or pulled forward into what comes next. But in this moment it returns, even if just briefly, to where you actually are. And what you begin to realize is that presence is not something you create. It is something you uncover beneath all the layers of distraction and mental noise. There is no need to hold on to it tightly. In fact, trying to sustain it through effort often pulls you away from it again. Instead, it is enough to simply notice it when it appears. Because every time you notice it, you strengthen the possibility of returning to it again. And from this simple recognition, a deeper process begins to unfold. One where time itself starts to feel less heavy, and your inner world begins to slow down in ways that do not require control. Now we move into that gradual slowing, where your internal rhythm begins to soften even further. There's a kind of slowing that does not happen outside of you, but within you. The world may continue at its usual pace, unchanged and indifferent. Yet something in your inner experience begins to shift in subtle ways. Thoughts still appear, but they no longer rush forward with the same intensity. Emotions still arise, but they no longer immediately take over your entire awareness. There is a slight space forming between what happens inside you and how deeply it pulls you in. This is not something you force. In fact, it happens best when you stop trying to control it. The moment attention relaxes, the internal pressure begins to redistribute itself. You may notice that your breathing becomes less restricted, not because you are trying to breathe differently, but because something in you is no longer resisting the present moment as strongly as before. And in that relaxation, time itself feels different. Not faster, not slower in a measurable way, but less urgent, less heavy, less demanding. What once felt like a continuous stream of mental activity begins to feel more like waves that come and go without needing to be followed. This is the beginning of inner spaciousness, a state where everything does not need to be held at once in your awareness, where you can experience life without being consumed by every part of it simultaneously. And as this spaciousness grows, even slightly, something important becomes possible. You start to observe without immediately absorbing. You begin to witness without immediately reacting. This shift may seem small, but it changes the entire quality of your experience from within. Because when the inner world slows, clarity has room to emerge naturally, without force, without struggle. And from this quiet clarity, we now move into a deeper recognition of what has been silently building inside you over time. There are moments when you realize that what you are feeling is not caused by a single event, but by many small moments layered over time. Things you handled without processing them, emotions you postponed because there was no space for them, and experiences you moved through without fully releasing their weight. Individually, each one seemed manageable. But together they created a subtle accumulation that has been living inside your inner world, shaping your reactions, your fatigue, and even your sense of calm. This kind of overload is not always obvious. It does not always show itself as breakdown or crisis. Sometimes it appears as constant tiredness, difficulty focusing, emotional sensitivity, or a sense that everything requires more effort than it should. And because life keeps moving, you adapt. You continue. You normalize what is actually a sign that your inner system has been carrying more than it was meant to hold at once. In this moment, something important happens. You begin to see the pattern instead of being inside it. This recognition is not meant to overwhelm you. It is meant to bring clarity. Because what is understood begins to shift, what is seen begins to loosen its invisible pressure. There is no need to go back and fix every moment that contributed to this feeling. That is not where healing begins. It begins here, in awareness, in acknowledgement, in the simple truth that you have been carrying more than you consciously realized. And as this becomes clearer, a deeper invitation emerges, one that does not ask you to analyze your past, but to discover a place within yourself where release is still possible, even now. There is a place within your experience that is often overlooked because it is so subtle. It is not a thought, and it is not the absence of thought. It is the small, quiet space that exists between one mental movement and the next. Normally, attention is drawn to the content of thinking, the words, the worries, the memories, the plans, but rarely does it rest in the gap that separates them. Yet that gap is always there, even in the busiest mind. And when you begin to notice it, even for a brief moment, something changes. The mind does not disappear, but it loses its sense of total control over your awareness. It becomes just one part of your experience, not the entire structure of it. In that space between thoughts, there is no urgency, no demand, no narrative pulling you forward. Only a quiet openness that does not require interpretation. At first it may feel unfamiliar because the mind is used to constant movement. It associates silence with emptiness and emptiness with discomfort. But what you are discovering is not emptiness in the way the mind defines it. It is openness without pressure. And in this openness, something very natural begins to happen. The intensity of inner noise starts to soften, not because it is being fought against, but because it is no longer being followed with the same intensity. You are not trying to stop your thoughts. You are simply becoming aware that there is more to your experience than your thoughts. And in that realization, a quiet sense of relief begins to form, as if part of you has finally found a place where it does not need to constantly engage with everything that arises. There is a deep exhaustion that does not come from what you are doing, but from the constant feeling that something always needs to be corrected, improved, resolved, or held together. Even in moments of rest, the mind quietly continues its search for what still needs attention, and over time, this creates an invisible pressure, as if simply being is not enough unless something is being worked on internally. In this moment, a different kind of permission is being gently introduced to you. Not as a rule, not as a concept, but as an experience you can allow yourself to feel. The permission to exist without fixing anything. Right now, nothing about you needs to be adjusted in order for this moment to be valid. Nothing needs to be solved before you are allowed to feel peace. Nothing needs to be completed before you can be present. This is not about avoiding responsibility. It is about releasing the internal urgency that tells you that your worth is tied to constant correction. When that urgency softens, something very natural begins to emerge. A sense that you can be here without immediately responding to every inner signal, as if it requires action. And in that space, your system begins to relax in a deeper way. Not because everything is resolved, but because everything no longer needs to be resolved at once. You start to notice that peace was never waiting for perfection. It was waiting for permission. And as you allow yourself to remain in this state, even briefly, you begin to understand that stillness is not something you earn. It is something you allow. From here, we move gently into the first real opening of the heart, where letting go begins not as an idea, but as a feeling. There is a moment in every inner journey where resistance does not fully disappear, but it stops feeling necessary to hold on so tightly. It is not a dramatic release, but a quiet loosening, almost unnoticeable at first, like something inside you deciding it no longer has to stay clenched. This is the beginning of emotional surrender, not as defeat, but as relief. You may have spent so much time holding things together internally, managing what you feel, containing what you cannot express, and carrying what others do not see. That way of existing can become so familiar that letting go feels unknown, even unsafe at first. But here, nothing is being taken from you. Instead, something is being returned to its natural state. There is no expectation for you to explain what you feel. No requirement to organize your emotions into something understandable. Just a gentle invitation to stop tightening around what is already present within you. And as that tightness begins to ease, something subtle becomes noticeable. The emotional weight does not immediately vanish, but it no longer defines the entire space inside you. There is room now, even if only a small amount. Room to breathe without interruption. Room to feel without being consumed. Room to exist without immediate defense. This is what surrender often feels like in its earliest form. Not giving up, but putting down what you have been carrying without realizing how long you have been holding it. And in that quiet release, a deeper awareness begins to surface. One that reminds you that you were never meant to carry everything alone, even if you learned how to. There is a silent belief many people live with, even without ever saying it out loud, that strength means carrying everything by yourself, that needing less is weakness, and that holding on without support is simply part of life. But over time, this belief creates a quiet distance between you and your own needs. You begin to normalize carrying emotional weight that was never designed to be held alone. And yet something in you has always known the difference between what is yours to hold and what was never truly meant to stay with you. In this moment, that awareness begins to surface more clearly. Not everything you have been carrying belongs to your strength. Some of it belongs to your experiences. Some of it belongs to your expectations. And some of it simply belongs to the weight of being human in a world that rarely pauses. You were never meant to navigate all of it without relief, without support, without moments of genuine release. And recognizing this is not about diminishing your strength. It is about redefining it. Because real strength is not only in endurance, it is also in allowing yourself to be supported, even in ways that are unseen, even in moments that feel deeply internal. As this understanding settles in, something begins to shift. The pressure to hold everything starts to lose its absolute authority over your inner world, and in its place, a quieter truth emerges. You are allowed to release what was never yours to carry endlessly. There are moments when silence becomes more than the absence of sound. It becomes something you can almost feel, as if the space around you is no longer empty, but quietly alive with a presence that does not demand attention, only awareness. This is not something the mind easily explains. It is not built from logic or thought. It is experienced in a deeper layer of perception, where words become secondary and awareness becomes primary. And in this subtle shift, you may begin to sense that you are not as alone in your inner experience as your thoughts once suggested. Not because something external suddenly appears, but because your perception becomes more open than before. This presence does not interrupt your thoughts. It does not force itself into your awareness. It simply remains, steady and unchanging, while everything else moves around it. And as you become more attuned to this stillness, something within you begins to soften even further. The urgency to analyze your experience starts to fade. The need to define everything begins to loosen. What remains is a quiet recognition that presence does not always need to be seen in order to be felt. And in that recognition, your inner world begins to feel less isolated, less fragmented, less disconnected. There is no expectation placed on you here. Only the invitation to notice that beneath all movement, there is something that does not move away from you. And as this awareness grows, even slightly, a deeper sense of grounding begins to form within your experience. There is something you are always doing, yet rarely fully noticing, and it is carrying you through every moment of your life. It is not something you control in a constant way, yet it never leaves you. It is your breath, And in this simple natural rhythm, there is a quiet gateway back to yourself. When attention gently returns to the breath, something begins to shift without effort. The body starts to feel more anchored, the mind begins to lose some of its intensity, and awareness becomes less scattered across everything happening around you. You are not changing your breath. You are simply noticing it. And in that noticing, the experience of being alive becomes more immediate, more present, more real. Each breath becomes a reminder that you are here, not lost in the past, not projected into the future, but existing in this exact moment. And in this moment, nothing demands urgency. Nothing requires immediate resolution. The breath continues, steady and patient, without rushing, without resisting. As you stay with it, even briefly, you may begin to feel a subtle alignment between your body and your inner world. As if something that was slightly disconnected is gently finding its place again. This is not a technique. It is a return. A return to something so simple that the mind often overlooks it in search of something more complex. And yet, within this simplicity, a profound sense of grounding begins to emerge. A quiet stability that does not depend on external circumstances. From here, as breath and awareness begin to synchronize more naturally, we move into the gradual release of external and internal noise that has been surrounding your experience. There is a kind of noise that surrounds you every day, and another kind that lives within you. One comes from the world, from demands, conversations, information, and constant stimulation. The other comes from within, from thoughts, memories, interpretations, and silent expectations. And most of the time, both exist at the same time, blending together until it becomes difficult to distinguish where one ends and the other begins. But as you continue in this moment of awareness, something subtle begins to happen. Neither noise is forced to disappear, yet both begin to lose their intensity in your perception. It is not that the world becomes quieter. It is that your relationship with the noise begins to change. You are no longer absorbing everything with the same level of urgency. You are no longer treating every sound, thought, or sensation as something that requires immediate attention. And in this shift, space begins to open. Space in your mind where everything does not have to be processed at once. Space in your emotions where everything does not have to be felt at full intensity. Space in your awareness where you are no longer fully entangled in every layer of experience. This is not disconnection, it is clarity. And in this clarity, something very important becomes visible. Beneath the noise, there has always been a quieter layer of presence that was never affected by it. As you begin to notice this, even faintly, the noise no longer defines the entirety of your experience. It becomes something you observe, not something you are absorbed by. We now move into that soft unraveling of urgency, where the inner world learns to stop rushing forward. There is a certain pressure that does not come from reality itself, but from how the mind interprets reality. It creates a sense that everything must be handled immediately, that something is always pending, that stillness is somehow dangerous or inefficient. But when you look more closely in this moment, you may begin to notice that much of what feels urgent is not actually happening right now. It is projected, it is anticipated, it is mentally constructed, and yet it still produces tension in the body, acceleration in the thoughts, and a subtle feeling that you are constantly behind something invisible. As awareness deepens, this imagined urgency begins to lose its authority, not because responsibilities disappear, but because the inner story that everything must be addressed all at once starts to loosen its grip. You begin to see that not every thought is a signal for action. Not every sensation is a demand for response. Not every moment requires immediate resolution. And in that recognition, something shifts within you. The pressure does not vanish instantly, but it stops feeling absolute. It becomes something you can observe instead of something that governs you. This creates a new kind of inner space, where time is no longer experienced as a race, but as a flow that can be met with presence instead of resistance. And as this pressure continues to dissolve, even slightly, a quieter state begins to emerge. A state where you are no longer being pulled forward by urgency, but gently returned to awareness. There is a point in the inner journey where words begin to lose their function as requests and slowly transform into release. Not because you have stopped caring, but because you have reached the edge of what effort alone can carry. And in that space, prayer is no longer just speaking. It becomes an act of letting go. You are no longer trying to convince, explain, or organize your thoughts in order to be heard. Instead, something softer takes place. You begin to open what has been held tightly inside. This is where sincerity replaces structure, where presence becomes more important than precision, where the heart speaks in its own language without needing to be perfected. And in this state, prayer is not about distance between you and the divine. It is about intimacy within your own experience, where nothing is hidden and nothing needs to be performed. You may notice that the need to control how things unfold begins to loosen slightly, not because everything is resolved, but because you are no longer trying to carry the entire outcome alone. There is a quiet shift from effort to trust, even if that trust is fragile, even if it is only beginning to form. And in that shift, something very important happens. You are no longer only speaking into the silence. You are allowing the silence to respond in its own way, through calm, through presence, through subtle inner stillness. This is the beginning of a different kind of communication, one that is less about asking and more about being held within the experience itself. From here, we move into the release of control over what cannot be shaped by human effort, where surrender becomes deeper and more complete. There is a quiet exhaustion that comes from trying to hold together things that were never fully within your control. Situations, outcomes, timing, other people's choices, and even the way your own thoughts behave can begin to feel like responsibilities you are constantly trying to manage. Over time, this creates an internal tension that does not always show on the outside, but is deeply felt within. A subtle pressure to keep everything aligned, resolved, or moving in the right direction. But in this moment, something begins to shift in how you relate to all of this. You start to recognize that not everything was meant to be shaped by effort, not everything responds to force, and not everything becomes clearer through control. And with that recognition, a gentle release becomes possible. Not a sudden abandonment of care, but a soft loosening of the need to direct what cannot be directed. You are still present in your life, still aware, still engaged. But something inside you is no longer gripping every outcome as if it depends entirely on you alone. And in that release, a deeper sense of relief begins to surface. Because what you stop trying to control begins to stop controlling your inner state. There is a quiet freedom in allowing life to unfold without constant resistance against uncertainty. And as this freedom begins to take shape, even in small ways, you may notice that your inner world becomes less reactive and more spacious. There is a kind of peace that depends on everything being in place, circumstances aligning, problems disappearing, life becoming easier for a while. But there is also another kind of peace, one that does not wait for conditions to change in order to exist. And deep within you, there has always been a quiet longing for this second kind. It is not always spoken. It is not always clearly understood, but it shows itself in the moments when everything seems fine on the outside. Yet something inside still feels unsettled, as if there is a deeper rest that has not yet been reached. This longing is not a weakness. It is a sign that your awareness is reaching beyond temporary relief and searching for something more stable, more rooted, more enduring. Because external calm is fragile. It can shift quickly with circumstances. But the peace you are beginning to sense here is not built on circumstances at all. It begins to emerge when you stop negotiating with life in order to feel okay. When you stop waiting for everything to be resolved before allowing yourself to breathe more fully. And in that shift, peace is no longer something you chase. It becomes something you begin to recognize within moments of stillness, even when life is not perfect. This recognition changes your relationship with everything you experience. You are no longer waiting for peace to arrive later. You begin to notice how often it has been quietly available in the background, even during difficulty. And as this awareness deepens, something within you starts to stabilize in a new way. Not because life has changed, but because your center of experience is no longer fully dependent on it. There is a way anxiety exists that is not always intense or overwhelming. but constant enough to shape the background of your experience. A subtle acceleration in the mind, a quiet tension in the body, a feeling that something is always slightly unfinished, even when nothing is immediately wrong. And because it becomes familiar, you learn to live alongside it. You adjust your pace, your thoughts, your reactions around it, without always recognizing how much it has become part of your inner rhythm. But in this moment, something begins to shift at a deeper level. You are not being asked to fight anxiety or to force it away. Instead, you are becoming more aware of it without being fully absorbed by it. And that awareness changes everything, because what is observed with clarity begins to lose some of its automatic control over your experience. The anxiety is still present, but it is no longer the only thing defining your inner space. There is now something beside it, something quieter, something more stable, a presence of awareness that is not rushing, not reacting, not tightening around every sensation. And as you stay with this gently, even briefly, the intensity begins to soften in waves. Not in a linear way, not in a perfect way, but in a natural rhythm of release and return. You may notice moments where the mind feels less crowded, where breathing feels slightly more open, where the need to anticipate everything becomes less urgent. These moments are small, but they are significant, because they reveal that anxiety is not your entire state of being, only a passing movement within it. And from this recognition, a deeper restructuring begins to happen inside you, where emotional space starts to reorganize itself with more clarity and less pressure. There is a quiet process that takes place when you stop constantly resisting what you feel. It does not happen instantly, and it is not always noticeable at first, but slowly, something within you begins to rearrange itself. Emotions that once felt tangled start to separate slightly. Thoughts that felt overwhelming begin to lose some of their density. Inner tension does not disappear completely, but it begins to find more space to exist without consuming everything around it. This is not control. It is natural rebalancing. For a long time, your inner world may have been carrying overlapping emotional states, unresolved impressions and silent reactions that never had the chance to fully settle. And when nothing has space to settle, everything feels heavier than it actually is. But now, in this state of presence, something different becomes possible. You are no longer adding pressure on top of what already exists. You are allowing things to be seen without immediately trying to correct or suppress them. And in that allowance, your inner world begins to organize itself in a more gentle way. What was chaotic becomes more structured in awareness. What was compressed begins to expand. What was hidden starts to surface just enough to be acknowledged, not overwhelmed. And this reorganization does not require effort. It happens through awareness itself, through the simple act of staying present without resistance. You may begin to feel moments of clarity emerging between emotional layers, as if space is opening where before there was only density. And in that space, something important is forming. A quiet return of trust in your own inner stability, even in the presence of uncertainty. There are moments in life when what you can see, understand, or explain is not enough to bring comfort. The mind looks for clarity, for certainty, for reasons that make everything feel secure. But life does not always offer that kind of immediate understanding. And in that space of uncertainty, trust is often tested. Not the kind of trust that depends on outcomes, but the deeper kind that exists even when outcomes are unknown. As you continue in this inner journey, something begins to shift within your perception. You start to recognize that not everything meaningful is visible while it is unfolding. Some processes only reveal their purpose over time, through layers you cannot access in the present moment. And yet, even without full understanding, life continues to move. Moments pass, experiences unfold, and something within you adapts, learns, and survives each transition. This is where trust begins to quietly return. Not as certainty, but as willingness to remain open even without full answers. You are no longer required to mentally resolve everything in order to feel safe within yourself. There is a deeper stability forming that is not dependent on clarity, but on presence. And in that presence, uncertainty becomes less threatening. It becomes something you can sit beside without immediately needing to escape it or solve it. This does not remove the unknown, but it changes your relationship with it. And in that change, something powerful begins to emerge. A sense that even what you cannot see may still be unfolding with meaning, even if that meaning is not yet available to you. There is a subtle shift that begins to happen when emotional tension is no longer being constantly reinforced. It does not feel like an instant transformation, but more like something heavy slowly losing its grip without you needing to force it away. You may notice that certain thoughts do not feel as dense as they once did. Certain emotions no longer expand into the same intensity. There is a kind of space forming around what you feel, and that space changes everything. Because what once felt like it was inside you now feels like something you are aware of, rather than something you are fully consumed by. This is where lightness begins to emerge, not as the absence of challenges, but as a different way of carrying awareness through them. You are no longer fully merging with every emotional wave that passes through your experience. Instead, you begin to notice that there is a part of you that remains steady, even as inner states continue to shift, and in that steadiness, life begins to feel less compressed. There is more room in your thoughts, more openness in your emotions, more breathing space in your inner world. This lightness is not something you create through effort. It is something that appears when resistance begins to soften, when control is no longer held as tightly, and when awareness becomes more present than reaction. And as this quality deepens even slightly, you may start to feel a sense of ease that does not depend on external circumstances changing first. If there is a moment in this inner journey where peace is no longer something you visit briefly and then lose again. It begins to feel more integrated, as if it is slowly finding a place within both your mind and your body. This is not a sudden shift. It is a gradual settling, like something that has been scattered beginning to come back together in a more natural alignment. Your thoughts do not need to become perfectly silent for this to happen. Your emotions do not need to be fully resolved. Instead, something deeper begins to stabilize beneath all of it. You may notice that your breathing feels less interrupted by tension. Your body feels less like it is constantly bracing for something, and your mind, while still active, no longer feels like it is carrying the same level of pressure in every direction. Peace in this state is not an external condition. It becomes an internal presence that coexists with whatever else is happening, and because of that, it feels more reliable. Not because life has stopped changing, but because your center of experience is no longer completely dependent on those changes. This integration does not mean everything becomes perfect. It means you begin to experience yourself differently within imperfection. There is less resistance to what is, and more space to simply remain present without fragmentation. And as this settles further, you may begin to realize that peace was never something separate from you. It was always a quieter layer beneath the noise, waiting to be noticed rather than created. There is a misconception that moments like this end when the words stop, as if what you experience here is contained only within this space, and then disappears once you return to your daily life. But what truly happens is something different. What has been awakened in you does not rely on this moment to continue existing. Peace, once recognized within, does not remain confined to a single experience. It begins to extend quietly into other parts of your day. Even when you are no longer consciously focusing on it, you may find it returning in unexpected ways. In a brief pause between thoughts, in a calmer breath during a busy moment, in a softer response to something that once would have disturbed you more deeply. It does not mean life becomes free of challenges. It means your relationship with those challenges begins to change. Because something within you now remembers that stillness is available, even in the middle of movement. And this remembrance becomes a kind of anchor. Not something you hold tightly, but something that holds you in return when you need it most. As you continue forward from here, you are not leaving this experience behind. You are carrying its essence into your next moments, not as effort, but as awareness that remains gently present beneath everything else. And in that quiet continuity, there is a deeper understanding forming within you. That peace was never something you came to find. It was something you returned to remember. And it will continue to meet you again, every time you become still enough to notice it. This is not the end of the experience, it is its continuation within your life.